by MGL Chapter 30, Sections 18 and 25, and pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 21. An act relative to extending certain COVID measures adopted during the state of emergency as extended by Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023. The Yarmouth Community Development and Economic Development Committee will hold a public hearing Thursday, May 11th at 4 p.m. in Room B of the Yarmouth Town Hall, 1146 from 28 South Yarmouth 02664. The public is welcome to attend either in person or via the alternative public access provided on the notice of meeting available on the Town of Yarmouth website. That said, can we do a roll call?
Joe Manning, present.
Maria Marasco, present.
Joe Gibbs, present.
Steve O'Neill, Chairman, present. And we don't have him signed in yet, but soon to be signed in is Peter Slovak. He's the planning board representative. Thank you for coming along. All right. So committee membership, Joe, you asked a question. We are down 2 folks. Yeah,
Remember, you should say that he's here on the video.
okay. Bill Scott is also here, Assistant Town Manager. Thank you.
And Courtney Butler,
And Courtney
and
Butler, Courtney.
Tom Nicanello.
And, yeah, okay. Committee membership, we're down to Joe to answer questions, and Peter, because of some adjustments on reorganizing on the planning board, Jim Saban no longer will be with us, and you're going to be taking the place of Jim Saban, correct? All right. In addition to that, we have Courtney Butler, who submitted an application to the town and is very interested. Joe Manning and myself spoke with her the other day. If that call was any indication of her eagerness to join and want to do something with this committee and for the town, then we're going to have a good representative here. So Bill Scott, who was on the meeting with us, has asked, I've asked that he start the process of getting her interviewed by the appropriate people in the town, and he will follow up that with Pam Barnes, I believe, to get that process rolling. In addition, we have another person, Carrie Moore, who is working with the Cape Cod 5, who's expressed interest in the committee. She was going to be here today, but she got called off to another meeting, so she can't join us today, but I suspect she'll be at a future meeting for us. Okay. Having said that, any questions on any of that? Okay, so next up is Bill Scott, Assistant Town Manager, and Bill's going to talk to us a little bit about town meeting updates on the wastewater and the River Walk Park project. Bill, you're up.
Sure.
Thank you.
The Riverwalk Park, I'm not really directly involved in that, but let me go to the wastewater. Obviously, everybody knows it was approved. And contracts 2 and 3 are already out to bid, and they're looking at a starting date somewhere in July. So contracts 2 and 3 are to the, never get my bearings straight around here, because when people tell me to go west to go to Boston, that's defeats almost 50 years of my life. So but the portion to the east of where DOT was going to be is the portion that's contracts 2 and 3, and also down to South Shore Drive. And what I'll go over is actually we're looking at a MassWorks grant for contracts 2 and 3. So right now wastewater is in the implementation mode, which is a completely different paradigm than sort of the approval mode. So in that regard, a lot of that is Jeff's team, moving the project forward and going through the bidding process and completing that, and then going to construction and detouring and all that has to entail. The Riverwalk Park was approved for the $3 million bond and other funding from both the CPA and also from free cash. So it's best that Community Development Office give you updates on that, but I believe it allows them to move into completing their permitting and moving into bid documents and that step. Any questions on that before I go down to the projects?
I have one question, Bill.
Yeah.
With regards to contracts 2 and 3, how does that line up or not line up with the DOT tip?
Well, the contracts 2 and 3 are not in the DOT tip area. So if you look at the map, they are to the right of that. So they're to the right of Parker's River, and then The DOT area is, might be contract 4. I can see if I can find a map for you, before we finish, but so there are multiple contracts, some of them just individual, pumping stations, but 2 and 3 is not part of the DOT project, so that's why they wanted to start with that one to give DOT more time to sort of finish up their work.
So the goal is still to keep those, to try to align those. Whenever DOT is gonna be tearing up 28, we're gonna be putting in pipes.
Yeah, I mean, I think DOT is on the tip, they were off the tip, so Jeff is more in tune with that, but lining up contracts 2 and 3, as I said, they go down to South Shore Drive all the way to the Dennis line, or close to that. That those starting now mean that they're not going to be doing any work in the DOT area, and therefore continuing to work with them.
Thanks.
You're welcome. So the table of projects, let me screen share this. Somebody might have to allow me to do that. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Yep, we got it.
All right, great.
Oh, good.
So these are the 4 things that we were thinking about would be helpful. As we move forward, we're moving from sort of an environment or into an environment of grant funding and larger project funding issues, but also as we move forward, vacancy analysis could help with sort of site-by-site projects. So the MassWorks grant, we have a scope for that, and I'm actually working on that. I met with a consultant today, and I'll be working on that. And the 23rd, we'll be going into the Board of Selectmen with an update and a request for support. You know, we're looking at, we filed a preliminary one for 14 million, but they said it was high. So we're trying to look at maybe 8 to 10 to be competitive. But given that, you know, contracts 2 and 3 are a considerable amount of money, it's 23 million and I think 20 million, that over 40 million, you know, us asking for 10 is a pretty good match. And if you look at the total project of 207 million, 244, we have a very generous match. So we have the advantage of actually having an approved project. Some of the issues in MassWorks grant will be under construction by the time they give an award. So they usually like to sort of see our contracts, but given we're using the SRS funding, we're following a lot of government regulations anyway. It's a large request. We might spread it out over 2 years if they allow us to do that, which means that we would then still be able to fund contracts 2 and 3, but we might ask for 5 million each year. And this is an unusual project in the sense in the DIF, we have about $107 million worth of private projects. So those projects to MassWorks is a pretty simple, basic premise. We give you the infrastructure, development happens. Well, what we're saying is you give us the infrastructure, help fund it, and a lot of development happens, but not all within the context of the schedule of the infrastructure. So MassWorks is pretty straightforward. So we have to make an argument that the 4 or 5 projects we have ongoing are directly related to sewer. And we can do that, and we can get letters from those people. And the DIF, less people wanted to be in the DIF document. There are more people who will be willing to tell us that they want to grow in a grant application. So MassWorks looks good, but there are inflexibilities in the program that we need to work on.
Bill, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Is the MassWorks grant the 8 to 10 million part of contracts 2 and 3, or is it?
Yeah,
In
we
other
would
words-
be funding part of contracts 2 and 3. We can still
Okay.
move ahead because we have the authorization. What we want to do with these grants is stem the tide of inflationary pressure. So
No,
we know
understood.
as we go through this, you know, we need upfront funding because the difficulty in sewer projects is versus highway. Sewer projects, you don't really get any revenue or a lot of revenue until you connect people. And then that's over a period of time because it's based on betterments and flow and things like that. So you have a gap in the beginning that we'd like to fill. We believe we have, money to do that. But we just want to make sure that, if costs are escalating, the MassWorks grant is addressing that, because any escalation we can absorb in phase one doesn't get past phase two and start compounding.
Okay, Maria,
So MassWorks grant, it's tough to get a grant after you've got the authorization.
Bill, and-
because-
Hi,
But-
it's Maria.
Yeah.
I'm curious about the construction contracts, because obviously with construction comes business disruption. Have you made a provision in there of how the contractors will accommodate access to and from the businesses that are likely to be affected by the construction? And once you get the bids back, will you have a schedule that you could share with us? I'm concerned about a couple of things. One, business disruption, and then the impact on any events that we might have scheduled
Well,
over the next year or two.
what we can do is, I'll talk to Jeff about getting updates on that. So detouring is usually up to the contractor, but Jeff, Colby of the DPW has already been talking to the police about, prospective ideas. So, and we're not allowed in the corridor during a certain period of time. So, because it's, Route 28 is a DOT area and they don't like us to work in the peak summer.
Well-
So we'll be not working during that, from my understanding, but it'll be a little bit later, but.
So on October, the Columbus Day weekend, we've got the Seaside Festival. Okay, that's
Yep.
number one. I don't know if we'll be ready by September, but I think you suggested that. And then around St. Patrick's Day, right? We have a parade. So any advance notice, I think, shared with us and Mary is
Yeah.
going to be very important.
So
Just a
we'll be-
red flag, just a flag.
No, I understand. In fact, RAC has brought that up in other committees. So I think that they haven't issued contracts yet, to my understanding. And once they do, they start talking to the contractor about detouring and all those other issues. And so they'll have a detour plan, and typically projects of this magnitude have a detour website.
Phil,
So-
can I ask a follow-up question to that?
Sure.
I know there's some anxiousness on behalf of the business community relative to when work may start out in front of their business and how they will be notified. In other words, they don't want to be surprised that on Friday night at 4:30, they're going to start work out in front of their business Monday at 9:00. They would like some advance notice, in other words. Is there any provisions in any of these?
Well, we
grants?
haven't got a contractor yet. So when.
Well, I'm
when-
not finished with my question, though.
Yeah.
I know that. Is there any provision that is going to, in the grants, that is going to allow to hire somebody that will be specifically charged with notifying business property owners when this work may start?
Yeah, I wouldn't put that in the grant, and the grant competitive work is bricks and mortar. They don't like hiring
Okay,
consultants and engineering.
so if
and
it's
stuff
not
like
there,
that.
where else would it be coming
Well,
from?
it'd probably be it's in the budget to basically, and also the DPW will work on those issues and notifying people. So, I mean, that the network that was established to get the approval will go back to establishing a network to keep the word out there. And we have the Phase One Futures Group, which we've been working with in the chamber to get the word out on various things like the vote and numbers. So in the grant, either grant is not going to cover sort of those soft costs, because when you start putting those soft costs in there, they start saying, why can't you pay for that? And it becomes less competitive. So,
Understood, but you said budget. Is that the municipal budget or what budget you're referring to?
well, I mean, we'll have staff members and others, and we'll just make people available to do that work.
Okay,
I mean,
Thank
it's these these things are related to the grant funding. I mean, we can have an update as to detouring and notification and all that once they settle on that system. Right now, they have to settle on a contractor and start talking to them about their start date, and then their schedule, because the contractor gives us the schedule. So then we start aligning that with some of the issues we mentioned in terms of events and other peak periods so that we understand what to avoid. So until we get a contractor, we don't really, in that sort of mode to be able to tell everybody what's happening.
I just like to make a comment that having gone through this before as a director of a redevelopment authority, the business disruption can be the most contentious. And to the extent that we make an effort, a concerted effort to coordinate, and then perhaps when the time comes, this committee might choose to, if there are any available funds, to mitigate any business disruption. So again, I just want to raise it as a big red flag, that we can get everybody coordinated, and not create
Good.
contention.
Anybody else?
I understand. I drive from Yarmouth to Mashpee, and I drive through some construction that
Yeah,
is unique. And and without warning in some places, and even the bridge as you come over those hills heading west, and you come over a hill and all the traffic is stopped and there's no sign saying this is
so
stop traffic.
one more question. And I'm sure, Bill, that you've all planned for it, but is there anything that we could do to help you get the word out? And I think I'm hearing Mary that she may have already
She wants to
lit
say,
the fire under that.
I think she wants to say something, or Mary.
No, I was just gonna say, so we've been in direct communication with Bill and his team about this in particular.
Yeah.
I think there are some things we could do to help them now. Maybe look at the schedule of events for the next 2 years, have that prepared to provide to Bill and his team, just, any little thing we can think of that's gonna happen.
Yeah.
Also, the communication to the business community, if they have business disruption insurance, that could apply to them that they could use during this project. That was something I learned in a major project in Western Mass. So, educating the business community, what some things, resources they may have in place that may help them when this goes through.
Okay, good. All right, EDA grant.
Yeah, so EDA is open round, at least last time we checked, and it is the Economic Development Administration. It's a federal grant. They're a little bit more difficult because you have to have 75% documents to even talk to them, 70%. So writing the MassWorks grant ahead of time gives us a lot of narrative for the EDA grant. And then what we would do is we would target the EDA grant for the treatment plant. So we're not doubling up in the area. The MassWorks grant is for the collection system in contracts 2 and 3. By the time we go for the EDA grant, maybe in July or August, we would have the level of detail in our plans and our treatment plant to be able to apply. So we would probably look at the same consultant and filing the application, and hopefully we would go after the same amount. They fluctuate in terms of their amount, but they usually give out bigger amounts than MassWorks does. So we would try to get some of that upfront money and put it to the treatment plant. So we'll do the MassWorks grant, and then right afterwards go right into the EDA grant. So we would start working with the county in that regard, because apparently we have to go through the county down here, but also work with, the appropriate political entities to get support. But we looked at it before the sewer project, but there wasn't enough economic evidence right away because we didn't have the diff done to tell us who was interested in building. EDA is more in tune with sort of a, not really going to project versus sewer. I mean, if you give them an entire area that's going to be revitalized, they're more in tune to listening to that than MassWorks. So hopefully we might go for the same amount in EDA.
Bill, is this the CEDC funds? What are you
We
referring
would
to?
look at maybe having that fund consultant to help write the grant. And I find it better that you hire somebody to work directly with the county so they can be getting them the information they need right away. rather than, you know, staff sometimes is wrapped up with something and you start losing communication with the county who's gonna come back to you and
Yep.
say, we need this right away or this right away, so.
So what are you seeking for in CEDC funds there?
Probably, you know, we were looking at 12,000 for MassWorks, which we're funding, and then CDC probably about 10 to 15, depending upon how complex the EDA grant is gonna be, but we won't be looking at that until after the MassWorks is filed. So we'll pick up the EDA probably in late July, August, and
Okay.
start filing that. And as I said, what we're gonna file for MassWorks, some of the evidence, project description, it's all synonymous to EDA, so it won't be a
Okay.
heavy lift, but the issue with EDA is once you make certain milestones, you know, you start talking to the rep and then you start talking to Washington. So it's an exercise in having somebody on board to communicate with them as they move through the process. MassWorks, you hand in a grant, you get an award, and most of the dialogue happens after the award. EDA, the dialogue happens before the award sometimes.
Okay, any questions on EDA? If not, then we get the phase one vacancy and redevelopment analysis.
Yeah, so moving into that, so we want to look at what are our reinvestment opportunities, or investment opportunities. So we have several property owners have already come to us, they're in the diff, and others that aren't in the diff that have talked to us and said, we're going to rebuild. So we know that the Tasty Buffet, and I know that there's been, you know, studies on vacancy so far. We've done, I think committee members and the chamber have done a good work in getting that vacancy. What we would do is we'd take every single parcel in phase one, get it from the assessors database, and then go to it and say, okay, is this one vacant? And if so, then what plan might we want to develop versus vacant buildings? So you're going to have, you know, underutilized site in terms of the sort of continuum. You can have completely vacant sites to vacant buildings, completely to partially vacant buildings to underutilized sites like a small building, 1 story, things like that. Those sort of 4 categories you would look at and say, okay, if we were to redevelop this, what would we do? Now, that might be, you know, we were looking at a market analysis, but we might as well get right to the point, you know, in terms of going through these sites that are from a fully vacant site, no building, anything, to underutilized, and saying, how will we treat that? And then you would have profile sheets on each of those sites and say, here, this is a completely vacant site. It could hold 20,000 square foot restaurant with X number of parking, almost in a tabular format, or it could hold an office building, or it could hold this. And then by having that inventory, a couple of things happen. We start looking at what does a build out look like? What does the new tax revenue look like? And also it's a marketing tool. We can put those up there and get people interested in, you know, are you interested in this site? And it's more also about what does existing zoning do? And we might take it a step further and say, if we had different zoning, what could we do? So you know that we've talked about diversifying our sort of land uses and moving into something that's other than hospitality. So maybe medical or something that gives us a year-round employment picture. And by virtue of doing that, you get the capability to, you know, maybe you have a medical office building that is providing services to local people who then don't have to go to Boston, you know, if they have an affiliation up there. And also those people are eating lunch, you know, they're having conferences, inviting people down in the off season, you know, and sustaining the other businesses. So this type of vacancy and redevelopment analysis could site by site say, well, this would be a good site for this different kind of land use.
Oh,
So you
Bill,
look at it, go ahead.
is this under the diff committee?
No, it's
Looking
not
under
that.
this?
No, diff committee would only be managing the diff revenue. They have nothing to do with anything to developing planning. So as the diff revenue comes in, they determine what pot to put it in. So typically in diffs, you're gonna have in probably the third or fourth year, you're gonna have more revenue than.
Oh,
you
okay,
have
I
in
understand that. I
borrowing.
think I want to get back to the point of, this is a market analysis of private sites, correct?
Correct. And it's basically doing an inventory of the site, what's the size of it, what's the zoning, like a profile sheet. And then taking a look at sort of a market study and saying, well, it could be a restaurant, it could be an office building,
So,
and here's the
So what-
parameters of that.
so I'm just want to flush this out a little bit because the underutilized program offered by Mass Development is already available for any taxpayer or / owner here in Yarmouth. So we should be getting that information in their hands now, if not already, right, Mary? So I'm a little, and they have, I think, how do I want to articulate this? How much of a onus should be on the individual private owner to get their act together and revitalize their properties? I'm just wondering, hey, it's an open-ended comment.
Well, I think
That
that,
if they haven't done it already, what is going to be the motivation for them to do it now?
there won't be any. I mean, I think that what you want to do is, as a municipality, you inventory everything and then you assess it. So you inventory all the sites and then you put them in one of those 4 categories, completely vacant to underutilized. And you create a document that says, here's what we think we have in the corridor. Then if you want to, you can go to Mass Development and basically say, here's out of these 100 sites, here's 5 that you could start working on with the property owners, and then go to those 5 property owners and see if you want to do that.
See, I'm not sure that's the way it really worked before. Perhaps you have a different experience up in the North Shore.
Well, frankly,
um,
if I may, I don't think we should work with Mass Development at all, except for a few key sites. I think we should do the vacant site study, determine what should go on it, determine the viability of it from a market perspective and in taxation and job growth, and create the report. And because I appreciate what Mass Development does, my experience is they take a long time.
Okay, my last
And
comment is
they-
I'm not sure that the town really should necessarily be in the business of doing that right now without some sort of a plan, an overarching plan.
Well, part of the plan is your inventory and analysis of your vacant sites. So the fact is if you start that, then you're also looking at what are the land uses that we prefer, and then you're applying them to the different sites. The difficulty is you have a sewer project going up, and really you don't want to be put in a position where you've got all this vacancy and nobody's doing anything. We need to stimulate that, and to do that, doing a report site by site might help. Now, if the property owner isn't willing to work with us and say, we want to be able to give you some ideas of the site, then we just move on. But I know if we have 100 sites out there, we'll probably get 20 people saying, yeah, I could use some help. What are you envisioning for my site? So yeah, you would need to have property owner buy-in, but this type of study gives you the data you need for future grants as related to the malaise, that is the vacancies, the empty sites and things like that. So our investment from the town's perspective in sewer now needs to meet what's the private side, what happens on the other side of the property line outside the right of way. And to be able to do that, you want to know what is underperforming. And this kind of study would tell you that. Now, if you don't want to go to full site plans and things like that, that Mass Development might do, then at least you have a list of properties which you believe are underutilized, vacant completely. And you could then push the property owner to Mass Development to do more detail. But right now, we need to document the malaise so that we can make the argument that the sewer is going to fix that, but we want to be able to, get more money and reduce the sewer cost And also, it might be a good opportunity to say, look, there's 5 parcels here that are underutilized sites. What if we put a TIF area here and say, this is where we would grant TIFs to stimulate
Well,
this?
that I could get on board with. So this is part of the $75,000 that we already approved.
No, I don't think I had that in the list. We had a market study. The top one would be MassWorks, but this would be, I need to get a cost estimate. This is going to be pretty extensive because I just take every single parcel in phase 1.
And one last comment, there was an economic development study that was performed by the Donahue Institute about what happens to the town when it puts in wastewater. Perhaps we should pick that up and dust it off. If you haven't found it, Bill, I'll send it over.
No, I have it and it's online and it's, if you were to look at studies in the foxhole to 30,000 feet, it's around 20,000 feet above ground. So it has a broad perspective assessment of what could happen versus the DIF study has 107 million committed from developers. So they're saying there could be 100 million based on, pent up, but there's no real data in it. So it needs to be a lot more specific than that. And that's what this study is supposed to do.
Bill, you
I mean,
said that this is different from the market study?
Yeah, this is different from the market study. You would use this for the market study, but the fact of the matter is, people are going to be going to ground and people are going to be looking at sites. So to be able to package a profile and say, here's a site where the building is vacant and it's this zoning and here's some potential uses under that zoning, it makes it easier for people to shop around. I mean, now that we've got sewer, I know people in the development community that I've called and I said it's coming and they're like, okay, well, we're going to take a look. A lot of
So
people.
where are we at with the market study? Have we hired someone already?
No, we've focused on getting the sewer proof. So we in the diff and the funding. So we haven't got the RP out. So
So do we need to combine these two to expedite it?
no, when you do a sequence like this, you would do the inventory right now, and then you can move into a market study once you get the inventory of your vacant sites. So this is a sequence, but we might as well get this one going. So then later on, we would basically hand the next consultant, given this inventory, what uses would we look at? You can do this site by site too.
So this study has to happen before the market study.
It would be good because the issue you have right now is you've got a sewer line going down over the next 5 years. And you've got a lot of questionable sites that could be moving forward. And there's a whole bunch of other, factors like job creation, taxation, and other things that can help us understand new revenues. So the market analysis was to take a look at do we have appropriate land uses on the corridor and how do we create a more diverse economy? Now, you can do that. And if you start this, you'll at least know what your sites are to be able to accomplish that. That
So
is,
we've got 37,000 and change left over from that 75 that we allocated for the market study.
I'm not
You
sure. I
want-
know I needed 12 for the MassWorks grant. You got about 24,000 for the left for the market study.
All right, so you're saying 12 is coming from that 37. Leaves us with 24.
You got about
So-
24 left after the diff, and then that'll give you 24. No, there's more than 24 left out of the diff. This is more than this is a more detailed approach, and it is. I mean, I think what we're doing is going back and looking at the budget, but this level of detail, site by site, is effective, and I just have to rewrite the scopes on those projects. But right now, understanding what's underutilized, vacant, and what we should be doing about it under current zoning, then looking at the market study is saying, well, more holistically, what the corridor look like? So you can imagine that if you have that inventory, you can build the idea of what the corridor should look like.
So the reason I'm asking is because as a committee, we want to support your efforts wholeheartedly. So if we could reallocate or take a vote to to move that money into this silo for the phase one vacancy analysis, then you'd have that at your disposal. That could be back on the top of your pile, and then we can deal with the market analysis at a later date, but we wouldn't have this. we
Why don't I
wouldn't have
give you
this
a, why don't I give
ambiguity
you a
out
new,
there.
yeah, why don't I give you, Joe, a new budget for the whole thing and break it all down based on what we spent on the diff. And then what, we need for the MassWorks grant, but that's moving forward. I just finished with a consultant today, a long meeting. It's pretty complex application these days. So, and why don't I give you a new sort of, I keep on looking to my right because that's where my table is. A new budget within the context of what you see in front of you and what's been done to date.
Great.
All
Mary,
right, and then, so we'll add the market study to that, but that's sort of combined with these two. So the idea is really an inventory of every site and then, be able to tell people within the context of zoning, because one of the things that when we've been talking to the people in the chamber and the phase one group, one of the things they're adamant about is they want to know that if I look at a particular site, how far am I away from permitting? So we may take this redevelopment analysis and sort of, apply a permitting template and say this type of project is going to take this long, in front of the commission and, the planning board, zoning board, whatever. And by virtue of doing that, we're taking a look at a pattern and saying are we getting stalled in permitting on some of these types of sites versus other types of sites? So the vacancy.
Can you imagine that this phase one analysis, as I think you said, that it would include some examination of current versus possible zoning, correct?
Yeah, I think that what you would do is, let's say you have a site that is perfect for a particular land use, drive-up restaurant. It's got, it's in a corner of an intersection. It has a high traffic count, but then the zoning doesn't allow that. And then, so why is that? And do we want to change the zoning, or is the zoning doing the best? So you're basically looking at some of the bigger sites and maybe doing a highest and best use analysis to say, is this the best zoning for this site? Or what you're really looking at is, do you need variances on some of these, and how do you then adjust the zoning to avoid that?
I imagine that the project that's after that is the same type of work, but just relative to town-owned sites, correct?
Yeah, and the town-owned sites, it's the same type of work, you're right. And, it's not for CDC to say what happens to them, but look, when you're spending $207 million on a sewer project, and if you were a developer, the first thing you do is take all of your assets and say, what could I do to them to make more money off them? So I think it would be appropriate for the CDC to look at all. You got two libraries, a DNR/chamber building, and town hall, and maybe there's other vacant sites that I'm not aware of. And you're looking at that and saying, okay, given
there's
this
a list.
major capital investment, is there revenue to be made here for the town, and what's the next step?
If I could ask you to on behalf, if anyone disagrees,
Mhm.
could you include town-owned sites in general, not specific to phase one in this particular scope?
I mean, we could do that as a separate phase. We want to do phase one only as a function of its coming, but we could. I just don't.
The only reason I'm bringing it up is because I think that it's been described that there's likely going to be some modification in terms of the phasing, and I think that having
Oh, I see. what you mean.
this in particular relative to properties that the town already owns might be helpful in driving some of that.
Right.
That's just why. I don't think there's a lot of town-owned property in general, so I don't think it adds dramatically to the scope, but I think it would be helpful in terms of taking a look at what those properties are zoned and what they potentially could be their best and highest use.
Right, and that we've been, to your point of the routing, we've been encouraging the engineers to have sewer pipe seek large condo developments and other things so we can get revenue and flow into the system. So we've been talking to them about this from a there's an engineering perspective and a cost effectiveness perspective, then there's a let's
Economic
make sure-
perspective.
yeah, then an economic perspective and trying to route this so it goes after large entities that provide flow and betterment and all that. So
Yeah, I think I agree with that wholeheartedly. I'm sure the rest of the committee
Yeah.
probably does
All
too.
right, so now just one more comment. Having worked with those businesses on the Cape that wanted to expand more than 10,000 feet, it's pretty much a non-starter having to go before the Cape Cod Commission. So unless the Cape Cod Commission is going to change its way that it charges people for additional development costs and the time period under which it actually makes people go before hearings, et cetera, I would just, I think we should consider, Bill, that in this list of recommendations, we go for the low hanging fruit, meaning less than 10,000 square feet. I'm sorry, it's just, I've had a lot of experience and I know exactly what businesses were the non-starters, I'm not going to expand because I don't want to deal with the commission.
No, I know. I have several people that I approached in the diff that didn't even want to talk to me because of that and that they had larger projects. And I guess, it's not a problem to create a report that basically says, regulations shouldn't drive, community character.
And there's
Yeah.
also another opportunity, but it would require coordination with planning and with Kathy. It's that you can actually, the town, I'm not sure if we already have it, but we have got corridors or zones where the development district, I think, where
It's
the
a
Cape Cod
it's a-
Commission says we won't touch you. I know
That's called
Barnstable,
a GIZ, a growth incentive zone. and
okay,
we
so I
have
know
several of them.
Barnstable actively went before and got a lot of property out in the commercial area exempt. So I think that's probably something we should see.
So-
Yeah, the partnership with.
So
Okay.
so you've revealed the next step in the vacancy study, which is by virtue of taking a look at the impacts associated with regulation, is to basically say, here's all this pent up opportunity. So there's a discussion floating around out there that the relationship between commercial development and environmental protection is direct, in the sense that wastewater is the only way to solve the nitrate problem. And if take that premise, commercial development is really critical in making that happen because the treatment plant is in the commercial zone. So inherent in that, there's a logic that would say that if you don't stimulate commercial development, you don't pay for the wastewater and you don't preserve the environment. And the premise of the commission and a lot of those other agencies is environmental protection. When they first started, it was the sole source aquifer. So I think our premise should be is if we can't move forward with commercial development, then, it's going to make the project difficult. It's going to delay that new revenue and that new growth that's going into the diff.
But there's always an opportunity to do an expedited permitting process, but that's obviously something for you and your staff to.
No, that's
come up with.
that's what we would be leaning to, that our argument is there's a direct relationship with expedited commercial growth and wastewater success, and there's a direct relationship between wastewater success and environmental protection. So if the end goal is the environment, then expedited commercial growth is going to get us there. And this vacancy and redevelopment analysis is a way to tell all the jurisdictions and the agencies, here's all these particular sites, and under the current situation, here's how long it's going to take to get this revenue. If then we can take maybe a group of parcels and say, okay, what if we had an expedited permit capability? How much quicker could we get that revenue? So by virtue of putting these all in sort of a spreadsheet and then, taking a look at how long the permitting stream is for each site, we can then say, what's a delay going to cost us? And that's where we start building those arguments for, we can't really live with the delay.
Mr. Chairman, I'm looking forward to that updated vacancy rate so we can get our proposed facade improvement program back on the front burner.
And you're
Okay,
right,
Bill?
Maria, yeah, there's a whole bunch of things that can come out of this study that, as I said, I'm sure somewhere in there'd be a TIF district that we want to do for a site that hasn't moved anywhere. Or if somebody were to buy 5 sites that are all underutilized, then we would maybe look at them for a TIF to create those parcels. But to be strapped by 10,000 square feet, I've worked with medical office buildings. They don't want to do less than 20, some of these places. And you can't, I mean, you're going to have a walkway in between them and then they're going to build the next one. It doesn't make financial sense, 10,000 square feet,
Okay,
so
Joe.
we gotta somehow look at that more closely.
I was just gonna say, as part of your resources here is staff. I would think that both of these phase 1 projects could be done internally by staff, a lot of the inventorying of it. But we've had our open staff position for quite some time. Is there any
Good question, Joe.
status on filling that? Because I would think that that would be a perfect thing to at least gather all the data for all of this. And it could take the bulk of the load off of it.
No, we right now I have to, they're putting out a master plan RFP, and then they've got the drive-in theater site, and there's a considerable amount of committees that community development, there's just about every permitting agency, zoning board, planning board, conservation commission, the historic district out there on 6A, the Eurogroup, the CPC, and the Energy Committee. I think that they also help.
Bill, but the question was, is there any progress being made on hiring?
Oh yeah, we're probably we've been talking to Bob, and we'll hire that person that they can do this. But right now we're focusing on going after money. So, and if we can get a consultant to do these things, the consultant is then basically building the database, building the mapping, and also looking at the permitting, and staff can help them in that. But there's a really centric focus with staff on committee support all the way across the board. So
Okay, I'm gonna ask the
Workload's
question
already
one more
there.
time, because I'm not sure I understand the answer, and I don't mean to be sounding like a wise guy here, but I'm not understanding it.
well, I mean,
Let me ask the question. Is there a timeline to hire an economic development person to assist with economic development work and not these other boards and commissions?
Yeah, so we've been talking about that position to try to move it to something that is going to get resources and manage studies like this and go after grants. I'm not sure what Yarmouth was looking at with the model of having a person in a lower echelon be in economic development. So it would be more that I would be sort of the economic development contact, and then the lower echelon person would be getting this stuff done that's in this table to supply the data necessary to move up, because a lower echelon economic development coordinator, they just don't have the authority.
Are you suggesting, so I think, Bill, that you would be the sort of
The
take
economic
over
development person.
most of the economic development and then have somebody to support you? And
Yeah.
if that is the case, I would be on board with that.
And we, there's been talks about it, but that's already what I do. I mean, but at a higher level than what has been done. I mean, marketing, all those things are great, but let's say you get this vacancy study done, and then you put this up on the website and you say, here are some possible sites, and you go after people. So I know a few hotel people and some contractors, and telling them it's there's some opportunity down here, because you probably have a lot of well-meaning and good landowners, but now the paradigm shift has happened where with sewer, these properties could probably take a more sophisticated development than some of these sites have. And so it's a matter of trying to get the word out to other people to come in and work with the current property owner to raise the bar.
Is there a job posted?
Not yet.
Yes, sir.
Will this vacancy study, Bill, be, more or less a function of deciding what's good for the town? What type of
Yeah.
development is good for the town?
That's a good point. So invariably, if let's say you have a vacant site, you might want to be able to have an understanding that that site could have 3 uses, the most optimum to the use that maybe would be in the best interest of the town. As I said before, we want to really encourage diversity in our land uses so that we can extend the season. And that's really the goal of, some of the economic development efforts is get the season beyond its limited timeline and open it up so that there are land uses in the corridor such as potentially medical or office that are bringing employees there that are then shopping and going to restaurants in the winter. So we could parallel the market study with this. So by the time you're done with the vacancy study, we're making another level decision and saying, if we want, let's say, a list of 5 uses, which one of these sites would be best for that? So the first level is what's out there and what is the status of it. The second level is, what are the uses that you would do based on zoning and how long would that take, as we discussed? And maybe the next level is, out of 100 sites, are there 20 that we want to say, well, in the interest of the community, we think these sites could be this land use. It may take a zoning change or parcelizations. I mean, there's a lot of small sites out there that maybe are next to other underutilized sites that developers would consider to combine. So you're right. I mean, I think we're going to look at it from the perspective of what the town needs. It's also about, traffic. Office buildings tend to draw traffic, but it's by appointment. So you're not going to have a peak that you might when you would have seasonal uses and dinner and lunch and all those other things and check out and check in, So mixing up the corridor so that we can extend the season and get other jobs beyond the service sector.
All right, no other questions? Maybe did you want? Okay, Bill, thank you very much. You'll be giving us an update periodically, but also you'll be giving us an update on the budget as you promised.
Yeah, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these and other things that we're working on and give you a spreadsheet and update it against what we've already spent and then what we might need. And then I'll get back to everybody based on what we talked about, the concern about detouring and impact on businesses, and things like that. There is one more project that is not on this list that we've been and I've been working with Mary on in the chamber. And I think, Maria, we talked about it, is having an environmental and sustainability trade show for the hospitality industry. So all these products, and you guys can talk about it amongst yourselves. I think it's a great idea for you to get involved with the chamber. But all these products that are required now because of regulations or are just a better idea, things like solar for restaurants and hospitality, have a trade show in, Yarmouth and get the vendors to meet the companies. And instead of, fighting to find out how they adapt, bring the vendors to them so they can look at that. And I don't know, Mary, you still there? I can't see the little.
Here.
Yeah, so
Yes,
she
she
has
is.
more on that than I do.
Well, we're gonna have to figure out how to navigate this bottle ban, for one.
You're right, and this may, I mean, maybe it's less of a navigation and more of here's all the alternative technologies that can help you do that. Because half the battle is somebody sets up the regulation and then there isn't any help with how you work within it. And I think there's a lot of probably positive examples out there. We could be the center for, hospitality, sustainability, and all the different technologies that might be out there, from as simple as packaging to, laundry to, heating and cooling. And we're right in the middle of the Cape, and we're surrounded by hospitality, especially in Yarmouth. So it's not a bad venue to sort of be the center for that.
Bill, before you go, I understand that one of the many hats that you wear is now Parks and Recreation.
To some degree, yeah, I'm, the recreation department is under me. I have recreation, DNR, golf, library, senior center.
Okay, because I think we're going to be getting into a discussion today about a potential one-stop application for some community
Commonwealth places.
Commonwealth placemaking activities. And in my discussion with Jeff, presuming that DPW was more in charge of that, I come to find out that not necessarily, it's almost DPW's job after the fact for maintaining these spaces and not necessarily implementing any sort of progress or master planning, et cetera.
Yeah.
Just
So
want
have you thought about
that?
you were talking, is it Wi-Fi in these areas you were talking about, Joe?
Yeah, we're just looking for a way to increase the usability of these places, of these public facing places, and given the recent changes in how people are living and working since COVID, the Cape's been a much more dramatic mecca for remote working. And
Right.
I think that it makes a lot of sense in terms of attracting these visitors to see that they can actually get some work done and could potentially become a source of economic development relative to someone coming here who's seasonal or transient and then seeing the potential in our space.
I think, that has merit. I've seen it in urban areas where there's parks and they have Wi-Fi and you see people working. I think the one sort of detached economic opportunity is, I don't see a connection between these bike trails and the economy. I mean, I've done all the bike trails on the Cape pretty much, at least the ones, that are near us and all the way down the end. And the one thing I don't see is sort of, what about if we had Wi-Fi in the parking lots and there were, our town website or a chamber website popped up and said, here's the places you could go to lunch. Because some people might want to use the Wi-Fi to pull up maps, laptop and say, oh, here's where we're going to go. But, you don't see marketing signs. Every once in a while, for those of you who've been on the bike trail, you see this, cute little sign that'll say ice cream stand, and you're going up this dirt path through a parking lot.
Well,
An ice cream
the
place.
Cape Cod Chamber got $1 million grant to do wayfinding. So if they haven't tapped into marking the bike trails, then shame on them.
Well,
But I think, Joe, you had other thoughts though about the usage that would actually, what did you mention? Create event space as well?
Yeah, in my discussions, and actually I spoke to Mass Development this morning, was trying to identify what potential properties, what potential locations we could necessarily propose. I think that if we propose putting Wi-Fi in all of our public spaces, then the application gets watered down a little bit, and it's not really a placemaking activity. So in trying to boil it down to representative spots that would both geographically cover the town and also cover the town in terms of what spots are going to be the best for drawing the community together, as well as be applicable to economic development. So I came up with a short list that includes Packet Landing, Flax Pond, Grays Beach, and the West Yarmouth Library. So those 4 locations I felt like could be ripe for this sort of outdoor placemaking activity that would also include Wi-Fi, but would really be more of a place where you could conduct safely, you could conduct remote work. And to your point, Bill, the Flax Pond entrance is traversed by the bike path. And
Right.
there's really bad signage and really a bad job of marketing Flax Pond to a driver, a biker, et cetera.
Right,
And we've
you're
got
right.
that property out, we've got that property from where the bike path crosses all the way back. And if we could create sort of a placemaking area that's proximal to the bike path where you could pull off, take a rest, see some signage, see where you're at, and then realize that just 100 yards down this road right here is a beautiful park with pickleball and water frontage and all kinds of activities being conducted. That would be one location where I think at the same time you're checking your email, it's planting the seed that Yarmouth has more to offer. Likewise, at Packet Landing, we've got a captive audience that is coming over the Bass River Bridge and is stuck in traffic every day in the summertime, all day, and is looking at that location and not really seeing a lot of activity or a lot of potentiality around it. But if it had, solar powered charging stations, it had Wi-Fi, it had some type of not benches, but table structures where you could conceivably relocate your office for the day, whether it be a singular entrepreneur or an entire office could go down there and work for the day. I think that it would have a huge impact for all the captive eyes that are on that bridge, looking at that property going, wow, that's a great place. And if it was lit up a portion of the evening where you could see people doing work into the 6, 7, 8 o'clock hour, and then it would be electrified and it would have Wi-Fi, and then we'd make some ability for the cultural center to run an event there, for the family table collaborative to run an event there, and just sort of re-energize that place that really hasn't lived up to its potential since it was opened in 2017. Mary has been talking about public art spaces, and I think that the front lawn of the West Yarmouth Library is beautiful, but it's largely underutilized, and that could be a real attention grabbing spot for another one of these solar powered charging stations where you could sit under a shady tree, have access to the town's library Wi-Fi, and get some work done. There's a lot of people that are up and down that corridor that are salespeople or distributors, et cetera, that would want to stop there and have lunch and check their email and do that type of thing. And then you could also incorporate some programming there for kids that are underserved in that particular area. And the last spot is Gray's Beach. And that was actually the first spot that I thought of because we've already got a canopy. We've already got an existing canopy that's very underutilized in terms of events, and to put some Wi-Fi there in the bathroom and then create a space underneath that canopy where, I could easily see schools going there and teaching classes or running a seminar there. There's enough space under there that you could foster some growth in that particular part of the Cape or that part of Yarmouth that doesn't really get a lot of business activity. And I think all of those things in conjunction, really make this placemaking idea an idea. At least Mass Development was effusive in his praise for this idea because it's so creative. And as I said too, it's not so creative, like trying to pat ourselves on the back, but so creative in so far as the definition of placemaking, because to your point, it's usually an urban blight. It's usually a parking lot that's stuck between two buildings that they put a basketball court on and they run public events there. We don't really have an urban center.
Right.
So we've got to look for ways to make places in different ways, and supporting our tourism, I think, and supporting that transient economic driver is really a linkage that made a lot of sense to the Mass Development folks.
Yeah, I think that, between the remote working and that capability, adding the capability associated with the people biking through the community. One of the things that we were looking at in another town I worked at is QR codes. So if you
Yeah.
came up to a post on the bike trail, it would know where you were, it would know the businesses that are proximic to you, and then, it would give you a list of restaurants and everything else within a few miles. So I think, when you're doing the placemaking, you're also giving them the opportunity to say, where are you in space, by maybe having a QR code that goes to let's say the chamber website. We were, Mary, I don't know if we finished that. We were putting a QR code on the back of the tickets for the parking and the beach. And that meant that everybody that took a ticket for parking at the beach could go right into the chamber website. So making the connections between these places as if they're a network and then a connection to business, I think would be the sort of the next level. So while a person goes to one of these sites, they know where they are, they know the other businesses around them, and they know how to sort of engage them. Oh, this place is still open. The Evans Pizza place, out there and near Dennis and, stuff like that. So
We
I
just
think
wanted to
that's
put that
merit.
on your radar because Steve and I are gonna meet with, what's the IT
Nick.
guy's name? Nick. No, not Nick. The
Yeah,
IT guy. We're gonna meet with him tomorrow, Paul.
Coffee.
Yeah, so it'll be probably more of a separate network outside of the town network. So,
We just want to give you a heads up, though. We're
oh,
working
no,
on.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And I
the-
think that what you want to do is take a look at Station Ave and that bike trail parking lot, because I've gone to that quite a few times and people just load the bikes on the roof and then they drive off and they have no idea what's around them or where they could go.
Yeah,
So-
no, that's definitely part of it for sure. But just as an example, like I work from home now. And I would really, it would really help my general mental health if I could get out of my house and still get work done. So to
Right.
be able to go to a place like that, I don't think I'm alone in saying that either. Because this is a new phenomenon where I get up to go to work and I don't leave the house, I just shuffle down the hallway.
Within the context of that idea, and I know I'm leaning too much on the bike stuff. Imagine just sticking your laptop in a bike
Okay.
pack and then just, hopping from one of these areas to the next, stopping, doing some work and, still having the same Wi-Fi capability though.
I would
Yeah.
absolutely do that.
Yeah.
Mary,
So-
yes.
Does anyone know the status? Remember Kyle was working on the wayfinding signs that were gonna go on the bike trail?
Don't have any idea. We can look
We
at
might
them.
wanna look at that just if you guys are thinking the same. Just so
Internet
that
connection.
Thank
maybe
you.
they're together.
Let
All right,
me,
any other-
before I leave, let me make sure we're all on the same page I'm gonna write down a list of the stuff, detouring. And excuse me for my, I should write more than that, business impacts for, what else was
Steve's
the?
taking really good minutes.
No,
No, don't say that. That's like
Yeah,
me and washing windows. No, thank you.
you're gonna give us an updated budget and timelines, that type
Yep.
of thing. Yeah.
And then updated budget.
So we hope in the meantime, you get to use some of those boats out in the back of you there. That's a pretty nice picture. I like that.
Oh, that's Newburyport Harbor, actually. That's the Coast
Cool.
Guard station right behind me.
Wow.
That's I used to bike at sunrise out to Plum Island and on the way back take photographs too.
Gotta get you a picture of Packet.
Yeah, right. That's fun.
So
All right, Bill.
updated budget for projects.
Open Cape.
And then what else am I looking at? Obviously, the projects and updated.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yes, the position.
Yeah, the positions
Okay,
obviously gonna benefit you in the economic development agenda.
Yep.
we could go after some money
Yeah, so
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna be.
for my co-op. I can. Okay,
yeah.
are you still making notes?
No, still making notes.
there you are.
detouring
I
business
see.
impact. Well, the good thing is Karen and anybody can go back. to
We're
the
gonna-
document and find this chat.
And yeah, we're gonna get you an event schedule. We're gonna, which you may already have on your calendar.
All right,
And then just as a footnote, we need to coordinate on the vacant. I mean, we already did a pretty good job with the
Right.
list. So just a reminder to this committee, we had talked about going before the EEAC to ask for a special Cape or Yarmouth designation for to be able to get tax credits. Meaning instead of a full a lease for 12 months, well, it has to be 2 years, but 12 months. That they would reduce the tax credit based upon a seasonal year. That would require a recommendation from our committee to you and Bob, and then to go, the letter has to be sent by the selectmen. But I really don't want to lose sight of that, because they're convening a new committee soon, and be nice to get on their agenda in
I also
preparation
get-
for next season.
I'll get you the grant MassWorks. I'm going to the board on the 23rd. When's your next meeting? I'd probably ask for a recommendation from you guys, from your committee.
Probably gonna be in early June, Bill.
All right,
Juice.
I might, I'll
You need-
send you the paperwork. I obviously don't have it today. It'll probably be by next week I'll have it. I don't know if you want to meet to get that
I-
recommendation and then get an update on these things.
Would you like a motion to authorize you to sign whatever
To a letter of support
bill,
from
a letter of
MassWorks.
support?
Sure.
I make a motion that the chairman be authorized to work with the assistant town manager to facilitate, prepare a letter in support of a MassWorks to go before the state.
Second.
All those, we need a roll call. Peter, oh, you can't vote. I'm sorry, Joe,
Aye.
Maria,
Aye.
Steve, aye.
There you go, all done.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hey, Bill, thank you very much.
All right, thank you. All right,
Bye.
all right, bye.
Good discussion. Very good
Are
discussion.
you gonna pick up the mass development
I'm gonna pick up the, well,
again, or do?
yeah. So we're gonna talk what Joe was talking about. Just want to give everyone kind of heads up here. So there's a lot of work. Let me back up. Jay Patakis came, he's working with the state, thanks to Maria, who was able to get him down here and speak with us on potential grant applications. So he told us about MassWorks, which are a lot of money there for subsurface and surface infrastructure work, public works type projects. But there's another piece of mass development. There's a whole range of programs that this town could potentially apply for. So Joe, Maria have been doing a lot of work on potential grant opportunities, and we got this.
I'll
Please
send you
make a
the
grant.
link because the
Sure.
planning department actually could
Sure.
get technical grants
Sure.
in order to their support.
So let me just finish. So
Yeah, sorry.
Joe, one of the items that we had on our agenda, we've already discussed it pretty much, and that was the economic development project piece of it. So Joe Manning outlined a few moments ago exactly what we're looking at as far as the parks and how that ties into economic development. So a couple of things we're going to be looking for. One is we want to get an application in. There's going to be some work. We need to kind of finesse that a little bit more with the state. And then second of all, looking for this committee to support that application. So if you think it makes sense, yeah, if not, let us know. You know, we can stop doing. it.
Well, I think it only makes sense if it has the opportunity to have event space. Because I don't see an economic driver in people parking their laptops and working. I think it's great. And again, if you supplement it with the, this restaurant is here and walk within walking distance, yeah. But for me, considering we are a tourist organization and I don't do they still have the concert series?
Yep.
So, and that, I sponsored that once when I owned a business in Yarmouth, never really had a very nice venue location. I think we're at the school. And that, where is it? There's a new one now? Where is it?
I've been at Parkers River Beach for over a decade.
Oh, well, I guess that's when I sold my business. But anyway, it would be nice to have an alternative event space. And I know you mentioned
Or another
Packet.
night, and that's on Monday night, right?
Monday night still.
Yeah.
on.
So we could have it another night at another.
No, just another type of event space. I mean, I used to perform sea shanties in Boston with an organization that made a lot of money by going and presenting. So wait, of the sites that you listed, Packet has the
Gazebo.
the gazebo, yeah. Flax, you just mentioned had Grays mentioned has a overhead. I don't think it's might be high enough, but could I just ask you to consider the grant monies can be very high, but to put retrofit existing spaces for event spaces, so not just Wi-Fi, but the lighting. Okay, but lighting that would actually enhance an event and the wiring, et cetera, for plugging in amps and guitars and
Yeah, well, that was
stuff like that.
kind of my motivation with meeting with Jeff. And I actually reached out to Recreation to see what they can provide in terms of if I was a prospective renter of one of these spaces looking to run an event, what the facility has to offer.
Okay, so you just,
So
I didn't hear
found
that.
Packet, no, I didn't
Okay.
get into that. So Packet's not even listed on the town's website as far as I could find as a space that you can rent. So once my expectation was once that I didn't want to go off on a tangent. So once we had agreed that we had boiled it down to these 4 potential locations, does it have water? Does it have electricity? Is it suitable for lighting?
Restrooms.
Do we have restrooms? What's going to be the noise
Yeah.
implications if we're, putting out music into the ether, that type of a thing.
That's a
So
good point.
I
So
totally was going to appraise each site for what they already have and see where we could move them forward to a place where absolutely they could run an events. And to your point, I think that places like the Cultural Center, the Family Table Collaborative would be very interested in possibly putting in their own application for a type of a program that they want to run there. I know that they can walk there. And if it's got water and if it's got electricity, they could have food there. And, Steve and I had talked about some of the drawbacks of that location. And one of the problems is you can't put tables up anywhere because that lawn's slanted. So you can't put a table on that lawn. So maybe some sort of a landscaping project that helped to tier that location.
Okay. Short answer, you're considering modification of these
Yes.
sites for event space,
You
which
want me
we,
to be succinct after all that?
yes,
All right, the answer is yes.
to generate revenue, an economic driver that not only generates revenue, but brings the people
That's right.
outside of the
Increases
town.
street
Yes.
activity, increases street activity.
Okay.
Yep, yep,
Yes,
Mary,
I'm on board.
So I was just gonna
Thank
say
God.
something to consider. Something to consider for Packet Landing economic development is the number of charter fishing boats that you have there and the benefit that would be to them. So
point.
also engage in a conversation with those fishermen. They bring an awful lot to our community at Packet Landing, Skippy's Pier 1. The number of people that visit those marinas from across the country is amazing, and we never capture that data
know.
anywhere.
it's almost like going,
So, and with Packet Landing for events, and I understand you're talking about the collaborative and the cultural center coming down there. Parking is such a big issue,
But they're
You know-
putting in parking in the bridge development. You know that, right?
not a lot though.
Well, they're putting in more parking there.
Well, I was thinking for those 2 organizations, they have their own parking and you can see Packet from both locations pretty much, so they can
Yeah, so that's
walk down
fine.
the street.
And then just curious why you didn't include, because this has been a bailiwick since I moved here 8 years ago, is the event space at the drive-in site. And the one thing missing, I know, is the infrastructure. And I had a meeting today with an event organizer that's going in there very soon. And again, no power, no water, no electric.
yeah,
And is that something that could be an application in itself?
I do think so, but I don't know for this round. So you're all familiar with the drive-in site, and there's a big park project that the planning office has been working diligently along with the planning board. One of your members, Jim Saban, is really the quarterback for the whole thing. It is.
I was on that committee when it started.
Okay, so you know exactly. So it's taking, if I get my directions right, it looks like the northeast side of the site is pretty much going to be allocated for the park project, but the rest of the site is what Mary's talking about, is going to be the event space. And we've been talking off, the chamber has, we have, this group is. What about bringing in utilities to the site? And this Mass Works. Opportunity could be the source to go after.
No, not Mass Works.
Mass Development. no.
Yeah, Mass Development. They're totally separate.
Yeah, I know, but I thought it was Mass Works for infrastructure. Or was that just,
That is roads, typically roads.
okay, anywho, it could be so I did run it by the planning board and not the planning board, the planning staff, and there was some apprehension there and some anxiousness, well, relative to the existing grants that they have and maybe those grants being at odds with something that we might be going after. So there was like a little pushback, don't do anything yet until we have more discussion on it. So I said, okay, we'll do it. So I don't think we're going to be able to make an application this round by June, but I would hope that next year we'd be able to do something.
So I make a motion for Joe and the chairman to put together an application for for a Commonwealth Mass Development Commonwealth Places grant to support economic development and public gathering, which I believe is the two of the major criteria. And one of the 4 locations which Joe had mentioned, if you want me to repeat, is Flax, Packet,
Grays.
Grays,
And
West
the
Lewis.
West Chalmers
and
Library.
West Yarmouth Library. Now I think let me finish, and so write that down. But is the procedure to send it to, it's got to be sent by the
Correct,
town administrator?
right.
Okay, and to make a recommendation on our behalf to the town administrator to submit it on or before the due date, June 2nd.
Is there any further discussion?
Second.
May I make an amendment to that?
Oh,
I
yeah,
think it's going to be town administrator and the board of selectmen. Can I just add that to it?
Yeah.
Okay.
as,
Good thinking.
do we have to second that?
Second.
Second,
Okay. All
okay,
those in favor of the amendment?
say. Joe,
Aye.
yes, aye.
Aye.
Joe Joe Manning, aye.
Aye.
Steve O'Neill, aye.
And
Okay,
those in favor of the motion?
Yeah,
Aye.
aye,
Aye.
we're on board.
nice work. Maria, thank
But
you
if you
for
need help-
getting Jay into town here and
I'm-
for doing
you
all the
know,
work. Nice.
I just want to apologize to everybody. I know that I knocked on this town's door, so I waited. And I'm sorry that I didn't get him in front of you.
No need to
fast enough.
apologize. No, and Joe, thanks to him, he's been doing a lot of heavy lifting behind the scenes, really,
Yeah.
tracking the stuff down. So thank you for that. And Mary's offered her input here and there, so thank you for that. Mary.
Mary's on 24-hour duty. Thank you, Mary.
Okay, so next up, we have on the agenda, the committee member updates, tourism fund. The last meeting that we had here was prior to the town meeting, and there was a number of concerns that us and the staff raised, or potentially that some town voters might be concerned with the allocation of our tourism resources. So we did some preparation on that, planning on that, if there wasn't a question raised at all by anyone from the town citizenry about any of our resources. So it went off very, very well, and had to hang around for a little while until after all the wastewater was done, and a lot of people left after the wastewater was done, but there was still a lot of items on the agenda. So it went very, very well. So at one of our prior meetings in the last few meetings, we talked about physical improvements and reaching out to town department heads. A letter has gone out to them. It's due back on the June 7th. And we'll be reviewing departmental ideas, suggestions, recommendations on how to spend money for their particular projects in their departments. Event program, I know Joe and Maria are going to get together at some point just to get an update on that. Okay, just as an FYI, we are hearing some rumbling about, allocation, how the allocations went, and how much money's been available in some of these older programs. So we may want to just take a look at how we can streamline it even further than we have. And, these programs have been around for years and years and years. Do we want to keep going we've discussed that.
Yeah, we,
in-
the preliminary research, we went and just reviewed what other towns have been doing. I haven't really closed a loop with Mary because that would be the most direct feedback, I
Yeah.
think, but anything in particular, you just let
Yep.
us know.
Yep. We've had it on the agenda for a couple of times here, so just, we can get it, some kind of update for the next, I know you've been
Yeah,
sidetracked.
no,
so-
definitely. I'll try to get you
Yeah.
that next
Yeah.
week if you're available, because I think moving the timeline up maybe.
And
was
one
gonna
thing
be a
that,
big part of it.
dawned on me as we were discussing the interruption of the road work.
Mm.
Is that wasn't there rumblings from the parade folks that they would be happy to consider moving it to Barnstable or some other venue? Wasn't that a topic of conversation around the award time?
Yeah, but I don't think I think they would love to stay in Yarmouth and they would do everything.
Of course, who wouldn't love to stay in Yarmouth?
That's right.
But what I was gonna say is that if we can go out of our way to make sure that we give them a heads up and, maybe talk to them about what their plans are a couple of years in advance, maybe kind of lock them in before their parade has to take a detour down some side street to get around the construction.
Okay, good point. Good
Right, if
point.
it's anything like what's going on in Barnstable, the road might not be safe for people to be marching down.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. So these contracts will be let, and is work gonna start this fall? Is that everyone's expectation?
what it
It's
said.
July.
Yeah.
Okay, the next one, part of our funding is to give some money to the Chamber of Commerce, Peter, and we, well, but one person on this committee, I think the chamber does an awful lot of work for the amount of money that we give them for the town. So like, it's a real feather in the cap that the town does have a chamber like this here. Part of that is a suggestion to invite the chamber in to maybe talk about what they've done so far this fiscal year and what their expectations are for next fiscal year for their budget. So any questions on that? Mary, do you want to say anything?
No, if you could just let us know a date ahead of time so that Jen and I can prepare a presentation. that'd be helpful.
And I should mention this too, because Mary's kicked me in the backside on more than one occasion to remind you all that there are businesses that have these open houses. Businesses that come in the community. And as such, as members on the CEDC, you probably ought to be attending just to let them know that we're here and we're glad they're here and they're putting their roots down in the town. So, I'm going to volunteer to go to some of these, so maybe we can kind of piggyback amongst ourselves and see if we can get to these events. Mary's good about getting the information out.
Can I just expand on that?
Yeah, sure, please.
So a lot of times, even for existing businesses that become members of the chamber, we do ribbon cuttings. And in the past, we have had a representative from the town of Yarmouth, so Kyle Pedicini was the rep in the past, who would come with a citation from the town. He would present it to the business owner.
Yeah,
Which, it showed that the chamber and the town economic development office was working together. And he would, and maybe there's a way that one of you that's representing this committee could, make sure they have your contact information. If you're having any questions or challenges, with the business, please feel free to reach out to us so that they know that they have that relationship with your committee, right?
yeah,
So I'll just give you an example. Next week, we have a ribbon cutting with a business that has existed in town for decades, Holiday Vacation Condos. They're becoming a member because they're changing their business structure. So they want to make sure everybody knows about that, So we're doing a ribbon cutting. I can put all of you on our email list so that you get our newsletter, you see when our ribbon cuttings are. But it would be really good to have somebody at least say that I represent you
right.
represent the Community and Economic Development Office, and we're here to support you.
Well, why can't we just, I'm sure there's a template. I can type in somebody's new name and then with a company with a list of, a short contact list. Want me to ask Karen for that template?
Right, but it's being president.
So it's a
Yeah.
citation.
Yeah, a citation.
And, usually either the chair of the select board or Mr. Rittenhour would sign the citation
Yeah,
that then is presented by someone. And that necessarily doesn't have to happen, but even, I mean, it's a great idea. if
I
it
think
could
it's
happen.
nice.
Yeah.
But, you know, they display it proudly in their
Right,
business,
right,
right?
right.
They're like, wow, the town of Yarmouth actually took the time to be here for me today. It goes a long way.
Are you sending out calendar invites?
So for ribbon cuttings, we send out e-blast. Individual e-blasts that say the date
Yeah.
of the time, location. And a lot of times it just goes on social media. It's not about the chamber, it's not about the town, it's about the business owner. And it gets them the exposure.
I didn't get a ribbon cutting.
You didn't want one. I have it in your folder.
I didn't.
I wasn't even
I
asked.
guess. I can't imagine.
all right, so
I'll be
What
looking
about-
at Packet Landing. I'm ribbon cutting down there.
And if you'd like,
the next one is next week, what day? I can't make next
it's the
week,
16th.
16th. Can anybody hear it?
What time, Mayor?
Hold on, let me just pull it up on my calendar.
I know it's
I know
on
I'm
my,
off Cape on the 16th.
Is that the holly tree?
No, holiday vacation, it's right next to Joe Morano's property and next to the Aiden Best Western.
What time is it at?
It is at 11 a.m.
I am not available.
Okay.
What is the nature, what are they, what's their
gotta
business there? I mean, it used to be. like,
I might,
those hotels.
might
They
be,
used to be
it's
more
tough,
of a
it's budget.
timeshare,
Right.
And they're trying to get away from
Time.
that, so that
Okay.
people just do like 2-week vacations.
I can let you know.
Like that, so that
You're
they're
not
not
here.
locked into the
Right.
timeshare.
In Phoenix.
Well, we could at least
Trying
get
to
them
use
something.
the-
We could get them a citation.
Bigger
I'll-
citation.
Share units.
Yeah, a bigger citation.
They can't.
So they're trying to, they're trying to
pen.
sell the
Yarmouth,
timeshare owners.
which actually I'm still annoyed that our wrappings don't say Yarmouth on.
Okay, all right. Next item is, so Mary, you all set with that, correct?
Thank you.
Marketing, thank you. So you just need a date and time, you know, in advance. And this is,
Yeah, we'll make sure that's-
What, one of these two dates won't work for Mary? She put on their upcoming meetings.
no, these are,
Did you check
these
that
are,
with you?
these are dates for the form that went out to department head. So the letter went out, is due back on June 7th. We review the 13th and interviews on the 27th. So,
So but they're scheduled meetings for us, right? There's
Yeah.
not, there won't be time for Mary?
13th, probably, yeah. I don't see why there wouldn't be.
Mayor's?
You're asking me for June 13th? Is that what you're
Well,
asking?
while you're here,
Let me just look at the.
because I think that's. We know we're gonna be seated around a table.
We don't need another meeting in May because we took care of.
Right, right.
Yeah,
Right.
we can certainly attend that night.
Okay, that's good for you. All right, good. I'll let her know then. And this next item, extra materials and packet. Peter, if you looked at the agenda, there's budgets and all kinds of good stuff in there. We can sit down with you and go over that at some point if you want.
Yeah, I came Tuesday, I think, and it was Tuesday.
Oh, perfect. Excellent, excellent,
So,
excellent. All right.
I have a
Go ahead.
question. Where are the minutes for the last couple of
You don't
meetings?
have- Mary, I'm sorry, Karen has been working on them.
Okay,
So, this next item is just an FYI article from Vita Morris on marijuana. Just for your information and for full disclosure, Karen and Mark Willis himself met with these two representatives from James Consulting and Good Leaf Holding, Ben James and Mark Brown. Met with him on in early May 4th. And they asked for a meeting, asked quite a few times for a meeting with us or someone from this committee and someone from the town. We were able to get that meeting squared away. And it was really just an FYI, hey, we're here, what do we can do? What do you folks think about marijuana, that type of thing? So we took them through everything. It's nothing in the bylaws or the zoning allows for recreational marijuana. There is as Mark Willis pointed out, there is allowance for medical marijuana. And we also let them know that there's a whole bunch of people in town that are opposed to this thing, and they need to do an awful lot of work to convince folks that they want to go first with medicinal marijuana and then expand beyond that to recreational, that they need to do an awful lot of work. So they are asking about questions on zoning and this and that. And we just referred them to appropriate spots on the town website, as well as to Mark Grillis. So kind of just an FYI, just wanted to share that information with you in case you heard anything, and all right. And with that, I don't think, okay, so yeah, here you go, upcoming meetings agenda. So June 13th is going to be our next one. Then we set another one up for the 27th. Does that work with everybody? The 13th and the 27th of June? 4 o'clock? Perfect. But with that said, we need the new Mary to make the motion to,
Oh, I'm not done yet.
oh, we're not done yet, I'm sorry.
New business?
Yes, new business, I'm sorry, yeah. Go ahead.
I just have a quick question. This was in our packet. Did we had any response from any other departments anywhere about physical improvements that they want money for?
Nothing yet, so that's what we're waiting back from to hear.
The 13th, right? We're gonna get them back on the 13th.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's what you were talking about.
yes,
All right.
Yep.
The other thing was electrical boxes. There's a brand new one that's out in front of the middle school.
Does it say Yarmouth?
It says nothing on it. Doesn't say
I think I had asked
study
for
hard. It
that.
doesn't say don't do drugs. It doesn't
Yeah,
say
That's very disappointing, once
stay
again,
home,
I'm disappointed once again.
don't play video games. So there's a new location that I would suggest that we wrap very quickly.
Can we wrap it with the words Yarmouth? On this?
I'm not sure that we can and we can't, but
Why?
I don't
course
know
we
the,
can.
I don't know the wrapping rules, but I would just suggest that we wrap that particular.
All it is
box.
negative space. You spend less ink
I'm not,
printing it.
I'm not talking
It's-
about design right now. I'm just making a suggestion that we add it to the list of boxes that we're currently wrapping.
Well,
I think we have the.
who
expert here to tell us.
administers? that?
So the chamber provided an awful lot of the photos to the economic development office, and then they had them done through Sinorama.
Yeah,
So if I could make the suggestion to have Karen possibly ask the chamber to put that into our current contract. And we could probably take care of that fairly quickly.
Next,
Yeah, I was just thinking of something like maybe with an apple and a ruler and a pencil.
I make a motion that we add to the chambers roster, the wrapping
I
the
don't think
thing.
we need
We
a
don't have
motion,
to.
no.
You
Well,
sure?
where is this one?
The school?
It's right in front of the new middle school, or maybe just a big dolphin.
I think it should say Yarmouth.
Oh, it probably should say DUI. Don't you?
Oh, no, because we're in Yarmouth and we're paying for it. Yarmouth.
I know, but we're bigger people and we should probably.
No, we're,
just
we
a
need
dolphin
to
on it
market, you're,
and
Mr. Marketing,
put
we
a
should say Yarmouth.
Flipper.
We're
Put Flipper
proud.
the dolphin on it and we're good to go.
Yeah, they can take it out of the $10 million we spent for the building.
Okay,
And the other thing was,
okay,
there was someone that stood up at town meeting and complained about the state of the parking lots in front of the tennis courts on Regional. So I just wanted to put that out there, and I went by and the parking lots are in really good shape right now, but as we all know that there'll be some point where they're gonna be extremely rutted and hard to navigate. So as a physical improvement item, I would suggest that at some point we put it on our agenda to talk about potential of paving one side of Regional or the other in front of one or both sets of tennis courts. I also spoke with one of the representatives of the select board who also suggested it might be a good location to maybe, as a physical improvement, put a couple more pickleball courts. So I don't know how people feel about that. We're sort of covering the town with pickleball right now, but there's some space there. And it's a visible location and it's,
Mary, you're interested in pickleball?
No, I'm not, but I would suggest that you engage with the recreation department for suggesting that.
Yeah.
If
well,
I,
Bill is the recreation department now.
well, Bill has been since he was hired, so you didn't, if you can, but I did want to say, I know some of you were very interested in the plastic water bottle ban in plastic containers and silverware. So if you're not aware, Peter, there's the Yarmouth Community Partnership, which is a group that's underneath the Chamber of Commerce. And so that was obviously brought up after town meeting. We're actually meeting with Sustainable Practices next week. Our take on it is to engage with them, try to work together instead of just having them come into town, get the regulation and disappear. Right? This is about education, educating the business community. How do we implement it? Do we need to amend it? We have not, as a chamber, had one business owner contact us and complain. However, there's been lots of questions about it. So we do plan on doing a survey. It would be very interesting to have someone from your committee that might be willing to work with us on the subcommittee from the partnership. Just to help us when we're developing a survey to our business community, that we're asking the questions that we want to make sure are answered. So if anyone would like to volunteer, I know Steve and Joe, you're on the partnership committee, but I didn't know if there was anyone else that might have a particular interest in this topic.
Well, I did get up and speak, and one of the organizers or the previous styrofoam ban did reach out to me, very optimistic and sort of a resolution. And I will just say anecdotally, I went out to dinner and I did tell one of the restaurant owners, and they went ballistic because they said, what am I going to do with the, $100,000 order I just had, blah, blah, blah. And it,
So it was a nice.
I should have waited till after I ate.
So to that point,
But I understand it's the concern. So to that, Mary,
interested,
what Jill Halliday would probably like.
she's already involved.
She is, okay,
So-
great.
So if you don't know, I sat on the Care for Cape and the Islands board for 5 years, and of course I just stepped down, and they were awarded a $300,000 grant through NOAA. And this is one of the exact topics that they can cover under the grant. So Bill, Jill, and I have been talking, and to what he was referring to about in the fall, about having vendors come in.
Right.
So that is already in motion since town meeting. And so there's going to be a lot of partners involved. It would be Cape-wide. We're looking at engaging every single chamber on the Cape because we have the easiest reach to the business community. We know who our members are. We know who are going to be impacted. We can survey them. We can get the economic data to substantiate any amendments that we want to do, if any. So I just thought I'd bring you up to date on that.
Thank you. And one last item before we take that motion. Summer schedule, any ideas? Sometimes we meet once July and August. Sometimes we meet in July and August. What do we want to do?
What was our final? We had to redo our thing where it said how many
12.
meetings
12
was a
meetings.
month. It just said 12. No,
Yeah.
it was every month.
Yeah.
So we have enough.
We're
double.
down one,
Yeah,
right?
I think so.
We missed a month. But we got 2 in June, so
Right.
Right, so we can-
we're back on schedule.
As long as we meet that.
Well, then it means that you and I, you gotta hustle and get something before
All
this.
right, I'm saying, let's try to get together maybe next week. Let's do it. Let's book a time right after this.
So you want,
Let's just
you
do
want to
it.
just hold off and discuss it next time we meet? You want to meet in July or August or,
Yeah, table it,
okay, table it.
depending upon what we see in front of us. How's that?
Yep. All right. Can I have a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you all. Good meeting.
Um,
Good job.